Hey friends. So while watching Gaia's mystery teachings, I was reminded of something that I've been in tune with my whole life. And I wanted to share this with you and also see what you thought, because we're all learning together. We're all fellow students in the collective soul experience of humanity. So she said that our experience and our vibration is relative to each other. And that's a pretty understandable statement, right? If you're looking to date and you want to meet people in public, you could think of going to a temple or a bar. A bar has a certain state of consciousness, a certain field, a certain vibration, and on average, of course, there's always exceptions, but on average, a bar is a little bit, you could say, lower vibration. People go, they get intoxicated, they get disassociated, they kind of shift away from normal everyday consciousness. And yeah, with one or two drinks, maybe you get a little bit tipsy, a little bit more open and more confident. But if you're really aligned, if you meditate, if you work on yourself, you can shift your consciousness and emotional state to whatever you want, whenever you want, however you want. I've experienced this when my practice is going really well, when I'm spending the time I need with the techniques I need to have really full control over my conscious and emotional experience to a certain degree, based on my own 22 years in this life of practice, experience, etc., informal training. So if you want to think of this idea of perceiving the astral world, seeing energy, connecting with spirits, higher beings, Christ consciousness, Krishna, gods and goddesses, or even the lower vibrations of demons or of anger or fear, whatever you categorize physically, metaphysically, psychologically, or spiritually on this continuum of vibration, it's worth thinking about how can one affect the other. So you can go to a certain location that has a high vibration to raise yours, but unless you live there, unless you're in a monastery or in a temple or make your room like a temple, as I have, then your vibration's kind of subject to where you go and what you do. And as soon as you leave that location, your vibration's just out in the air. And so are your perceptions. So a lot of people who visit a highly spiritual site or meet with a saint like Amma or have times where they wear like a lot of spiritual jewelry or with a lot of high vibey people tend to notice more spiritual phenomenon. They tend to have their perceptions increased a lot of times in classes and workshops and private sessions with people who are very experienced will experience more of that magic. Or as I teach it, the science of applied consciousness, as Arthur C. Clarke talked about magic as sufficiently advanced technology we just don't understand it, which is my preferred definition to separate the magic of spirituality and consciousness from fantasy, illusion, card tricks, things like that. So how do we get in tune with this phenomenon? If we want to perceive more, whether it's our empathic abilities really tuning in to our partners, our friends, our colleagues, can we have the enhanced perceptions to feel what they're feeling, to get a glimpse of their thoughts so we can have a richer relationship? And can we even perceive more clear intuitions, clairvoyant perceptions, precognitions for the things that we really need? Yeah, as my dad always used to say, read tomorrow's paper today and kill it in the stock market. That'd be great, and it's been done. But really, practically, if we want to succeed in life, if we want to achieve our dreams, I know people say that stuff all the time, but if you really want to make a life plan, if you're really tuned in, you do the work, and gosh, this is how I want my next year to go, my 5 years to go, my 10 years to go. Yes, I'm open to any change that comes in, but if I designed it all now, here's what I want my experience to be, my contributions to be, right? Sometimes in order to have those experiences, we have to be at a higher vibration. We're feeling stressed, and what do we do when we're stressed? We do things to make ourselves feel better, usually. Sometimes those raise our vibration, like getting supportive friends, meditating, getting a session, but a lot of times there's habits of lowering the vibration, getting intoxicated, escaping, playing video games, leaving and just being surrounded by pleasure. And that can be okay in a crisis, or if we're overwhelmed, or if we have the intention that, this is play, this is fun, I'm doing it to enjoy life. But if the intention is to escape, or that we don't have the strength to overcome something, and we just want to step away and not deal with whatever's coming up, then you could argue the case that you're lowering your vibration. And I would offer that this actually is more harmful than just in the moment. There's a quote that how we do anything is how we do everything. And if you want to be really mindful, really zen, you can have that with everything all the time. But if you just think about the idea of habits, of the parts of you, your thoughts, your actions that become automatic, then even just thinking about when we're stressed, when we're challenged, do we escape? Do we go away and disassociate into pleasure or into just something that isn't really productive? Or do we pause, breathe, let out whatever energy we have to let out, and find some way to raise our vibration back to the level where we have the level of resourcefulness, where we see whatever challenge came in as a gift, and we see that gift as something that can strengthen us, that can teach us something. This is great in healing techniques. Something really challenging comes up in your past, and those memories flash up, those possibly limiting beliefs arising from that come up. And in those moments, we have a choice. We can raise our vibration and say, wow, I attracted this experience in whatever map of consciousness or spirituality that you use. And because I attracted it, I claim responsibility for it. I meet it, I honor it, I heal it from my system, and I acknowledge that I have something to learn, or I have learned something from that, and I can use that to strengthen my life and to help other people. So taking this whole spectrum, how do we get on a path of continuously and sustainably raising our vibration? Well, I think there's two key points. The first one is sustainably. So again, it's easy to go to a temple. It's easy to wear like a necklace that's very highly charged. This is one of my oldest possessions. I'm not huge on possessions, but certain things sometimes matter more than others. And whenever I wear this, whenever people feel it or tune into it, they notice like a lot of high vibes, and I feel a deeper, richer sense of love with this. And I'm not a Hare Krishna. I haven't hung out a lot with them, but I got this from a group of Hare Krishnas in Michigan, hanging out at their temple, the Fisher Mansion. And this is just such a blessed, rich type of energy that I just feel very heart-centered with it. Now, that could be psychosomatic, that could be placebo, and if your perceptions and vibrations are high enough, you might actually be able to tune in, hey, there's something here. Maybe it's the essence of Krishna, maybe it's the essence of love and compassion. Whatever it is, this is a tool to raise vibration. And many meditative techniques, and when I work with people on a one-on-one, a lot of the techniques that I share or help people uncover in themselves are methods to raise their vibrations independently of anything in the external world. So that if you think about it, if you're a prisoner, or if you're trapped, or if your physical scenario and surroundings aren't what they ideally be, you don't have supportive friends, maybe you're not in a temple, maybe you don't have spirit playing, whatever you'd call it, can you raise your vibration and your perceptions? Find those resources that can help you, send out those intentions with a much stronger spiritual oomph of consciousness so they manifest much more rapidly, and that your perceptions expand so you have more options at your fingertips to solve problems, to get through challenges, to achieve what you want to achieve with a lot less work and a lot less time. And again, I know there's always exceptions. There's always ways of saying it's great to have work, it's great to practice patience, it's great to build over time. But really, if you want to build a movement, if you want to build a temple, if you want to clean up the oceans, or one of my moonshot projects is work with consciousness at a very high level and many people and reform the glaciers, something that could help everybody all around the world. We want to use our time efficiently. And if we want to restore from periods of stress or overwhelm or fatigue, it makes sense to have the highest vibration and perception possible, so we have the resources, so we have the options. And if we do this sustainably, we can always do it. A lot of people in the community lately have been saying, I want to go to events without plant medicines, without drugs. I want to experience an elevation of consciousness without these things. They were helpful earlier on in my path, but now I see how they hold me back. And so the topic of sustainability is really true in plant medicines. For people who haven't gone deep into spirituality, haven't had a lot of mystical experiences, the right use and the right biochemical balancing, ideally the right guide, blessing, prayer, reverence, source, a lot of that stuff is really key to using plant medicines and psychedelic substances in a way that can enrich you and not be depleting or not make you unstable. And again, medical disclaimer, I'm not advocating you do anything. I claim no responsibility for anything you do. I just have to say that for legal reasons. But just using this as an example, for most people, it's not sustainable to use medicines, psychedelics on a continuous basis to raise your perceptions, because they can't do that because just of the toll these things can take on your body and energy system. And even if you correct that imbalance, you probably know it deep down. If you're walking through a forest at night and you get something that's a flash of light, a microdose, or a huge lightning storm, right? And you take a full-on hero's journey dose, and you see the whole landscape of reality, much more than you saw before. And you have enhanced perceptions and maybe enhanced abilities for a time. What happens when that lightning storm ends? You have a boost of knowledge, an epiphany, a powerful experience, and then you're back to life as it was with a bit of a boost from a few hours to several months, depending on the experience. And if you really want to sustainably grow, eventually you need to learn a way to raise your vibration of perceptions in a sustainable way. So again, usually through meditation. Even this isn't technically sustainable. If there was a major natural disaster, if I was out of the house and didn't have this on, relying on things like this, temples or certain friends or even practitioners or traditions or gurus, I would say, if you're looking outside of yourself, I think as Wayne Dyer said, if you don't go within, you go without. And again, that may be cliche, but I think things stay in our consciousness and become cliche because there's a truth and a value to them. And if we don't take them seriously, we can poo-poo them, we can knock them down, etc. That's just how human psychology and popular culture works. But I just wanted to offer you a bit of a reminder that if you want to raise your vibration and perceptions, there's a lot of ways to naturally do so. I teach a lot of them on Magical Golden Age. There's tons of teachers out there of various levels of qualifications and skill. And I just encourage you to remember this one principle. Okay, so that was the first element, sustainability. What's the next one? So in Hermetics and in a lot of Kabbalah, there's this topic of polarity, of a continuum, alpha and omega. So just to use the earlier example of the bar and the temple, right? Say these are two things of polarity, and let's just take the most extreme examples. Say the temple is of, say, Babaji, or an avatar who a lot of people believe, who look into him as alive today, who trained the lineage of yogis, to Yogananda, who wrote Autobiography of a Yogi, Steve Jobs' guru. His book was given to everyone at Steve Jobs' funeral, and his story is full of mystical happenings, spiritual happenings, a lot of powerful miracles. So whether it's one of those people or somebody else that you connect with, just imagine their temple, and imagine you sitting in their presence. And imagine you witnessing the most incredible miracle that you rationally believe is possible in this world. And we don't have to categorize them because I think you know in your heart what that could be and what that needs to be for you. And so hey Zev, on the other end of the continuum, so say you have like the worst bar, like everyone there is stoned and drunk and people are like hitting on people without consent or permission, people are groping, there's all these bar fights, people are throwing up, like it's a really bad place. There's like, like corrupt cops and like a mafia scene and, really low vibration, and, there's human trafficking going on in the background. You could think of the lowest vibration thing possible. So that there's our polarity, right? You could say the alpha is the temple and the omega is the bar. And even though those are both extreme circumstances that we might be lucky or unlucky, depending on how you view those things, to experience once or twice in our lives, let's just take those as an example. Right? So in the temple, say that is rating of 1,000,000 spirit points, just to be a little bit objective, a little bit concrete, and have some measuring. And say the bar is at 0 spirit points, right? So if you're at a level 1,000,000, imagine what you could perceive. Imagine the parts of yourself, your deeper self, the realizations you could have, the knowings you could have, and then the connections you can form with other people, being really sincere, having eye contact, having full honesty and integrity and authenticity. And at the bar, the other end of the spectrum, people lying, people cheating, people deceiving, manipulating, all sorts of stuff going on. You could say of lower vibration stuff, and people just perceiving what's going on physically, not even that. You might not be tuned into body language. People might get anxious or threatened from eye contact. And the idea of connecting with somebody's heart and tuning into their soul and their emotions at an environment like that, pretty far-fetched for a lot of people. So, but by drawing this continuum of these polarities, this alpha and the omega, and I'm going to encourage you to think about your own life, what's the highest vibrational thing that you can experience, encounter, do? Could be meditation, jewelry, a session with a teacher, whatever. That could be your alpha, and your omega is the thing that lowers you most. It could be a substance, a person, an activity, a memory, an unhealed wound, whatever. That's your omega, and you can always mix these up later, but just take your alpha and your omega. If you shift more towards the continuum of alpha, whatever that is, meditation, prayer, phone call, mantra, that raises your vibration and your perceptions. And if you escape, if you disassociate, if you have that knowing and that intuitive, conscious inner voice that you can make the better decision and you don't, and you comfort eat or you escape or you lie, and you could choose to do something closer to your alpha, then you lower your vibration. So how does this stuff matter? Like, I think most of us are mature enough to know in the moment, are we doing something for our growth or to lower ourselves? So I'd like to offer you to close your eyes and think back on a decision when you were the most challenged in your recent life. And you want to pick something that isn't really triggering, but that might be a little bit activating. And as you think about this, tune in to yourself right at the verge of decision. And it could be any decision that you made in the past. And I want you to think of an event and decision where you chose what, subjectively, 3D, you could say was the wrong decision, where you could chose closer to the omega, the lower self, the ego, the lower vibration. And think of why you made that choice. Think of what part of you doubted your higher self, your alpha, your intuition, your guides, whatever you'd call it, and said, no, I'm not going to rise to this occasion. No, I don't have the strength, even though you knew deep down you did. And think of just how you felt in that moment, and think of the consequences. Now, the purpose of this isn't for guilt or shame or judgment, not at all. We all go through all these journeys, and we all have circumstances and histories, and we all flow up and down based on all that stuff. But just go back to that memory for a second. And this is a Damanhurian technique. Damanhur is an Atlantis mystery school in Italy I've trained with and I'm in touch with. And think about rewriting that memory. Just as a thought experiment, go into that memory at that point of decision and imagine, what if I chose to go on with my intuitive higher self, with that thing that would raise my vibration, take me closer to that alpha, and do what I needed to do. Take an extra breath, step out for a second and evaluate, call somebody and get support. Just tune in and take one action or refrain from an action. And just think of how that would have affected this major scenario in your life. And this may not be a realistic example, but again, as a thought experiment, imagine if this type of scenario that left such an impact on you that you can remember it clearly, emotionally. What if something like that happened every single week? And your decision and the method you went about that decision was part of your programming, part of your habit every single week. What kind of a person would you be? Maybe that's what kind of person you are if you have a pattern of feeling challenged or stressed and acting higher or lower. And odds are you'll probably be happy with yourself and grateful to yourself if you choose higher vibration stuff. And you'll probably feel like, with some form of language variation on this, that you could do better, you could be letting yourself down, that you're not living up to your potential. And so again, no guilt, no judgment, no shame, no blame, no shoulds. Just be mindful, right? And again, back to that Zen phrase, how we do anything is how we do everything. So I just wanted to start to wrap this with the thought that if we want to be aware of our guides, of our intuitions, of our higher selves, of our guardian angels, of whatever words you use for this category of stuff, then we need to act in accordance with that. I think a lot of people who know about intuition, we know if you honor your intuition and listen to it, it stays there, it comes back. If you ignore it, first it gets a little louder, and then it gets quieter and quieter. And this syncs up pretty well with the idea of you lower your vibration by choosing something lower to what you can do and have the ability and potential to do versus higher. So thank you so much for your time, your thoughts, your attention. If you have any thoughts on this, I'd love if you want to comment. If you think somebody would appreciate this, please share. And if you like the subject matter in general, please let me know in some way. Please comment, please DM me. And if you want a lot more of this stuff, there's a handful of ways you can access it. And one is through my book, Magic is Real. I've got a couple more coming out at the end of the year. They're really high vibration stuff, at least to my perception. The ego David was really pushed aside by what you could say a higher channeled source. Others might say as a version of my higher self that came through and pushed my ego aside. So there's a lot in there, and it's audiobook, Kindle, and paperback. And on my website, I have actually a lot of the book chunked into blog posts, and I have a lot of videos that are pretty high vibey on the Wizard School there. Post a lot on Instagram and on patreon.com/magicaljoy. I also send out stuff. And then also I'm happy to talk with you one-on-one. If we're talking as a friend, great. If it feels like you'd like to work with me professionally and we talk each week and there'd be an energy exchange, awesome. I'm really honored to serve you. And if this is our only interaction for a while, that's fine too. I honor your intuition and what you feel is aligned. Anya, my pleasure. Thank you too. It's great to see your love and your comment. So with that, everyone, thanks so much for coming by. I hope to connect with you again more in the future. Just sending you love and gratitude and all the high vibrations and perceptions you call in for yourself.